Have you heard of India's first convicted female serial killer? This is K.D. Gempamma, aka Cyanide Mallika. She's alleged to have murdered multiple women but has only been convicted of 6 murders. Gempamma was married to a tailor, but he left her when her chit fund business took a hit and he threw her out of the house. And this was when she turned to a life of crime. Gempamma would visit temples, posing as an ardent devotee. She would keep her eyes open for women in distress and gain their confidence by listening to their sad stories. She would tell them to perform a special puja that would solve all their problems. She'd then offer to arrange the puja in a temple on the outskirts of the city where she'd make them drink water laced with cyanide. Once her victims were dead, she'd rob them of their jewelry and money. Her first murder was committed on October 19, 1999. She killed 30-year-old Mamta Raja, who was praying at a temple. Her second victim was a 52-year-old woman named Elizabeth who was praying to find her missing granddaughter. Gempamma lured her to a temple and killed her. Her third victim was a 60-year-old woman named Yashodhama. Gempamma promised Yashodhama that she would do a puja that would relieve her of asthma. Her fourth victim was 60-year-old Muniyamma, who wanted to sing devotionals. Her fifth victim was 60-year-old Bilamma, who was a priest at a temple. Gempamma told Bilamma that she would sponsor a new arch for the temple. Gempamma's final victim was 30-year-old Nagaveni, who was praying to get pregnant and have a son. Gempamma killed her while she was sleeping. Gempamma was alleged to have killed one more victim, 22-year-old Renuka. Gempamma worked as a cook at Renuka's sister's house, where she met and befriended Renuka. Renuka's husband reported her missing in 2006. Allegedly, Gempamma told Renuka that she would be blessed with a baby boy if she conducted a special puja at a temple. Sound familiar? Many other families have come forward and claimed that their missing family members were murdered by Gempamma because Gempamma knew them all. She was arrested in 2008 at a bus stand where she was trying to sell the jewelry of her victims under a different name, Jayamma. She was convicted of murder, and in 2010 she was given the death sentence for the murder of Muniyamma. Gempamma was the first woman to be given the death penalty in Karnataka. Can you imagine finding out that your doctor became a notorious serial killer known as Dr. Death? Devendra Sharma was an Ayurvedic doctor who opened his own clinic in a hospital in Rajasthan, which he ran for 11 years. In 1994, he invested in a gas dealership scheme, but unfortunately he was scammed out of 11 lakh rupees, which is equivalent to 15,000 US dollars. This is when he decided to turn to his own life of crime to try and recoup the lost money. Dr. Sharma started going by Dr. Mukesh Khandelwal, and he and a group of goons opened up a fake gas company in Uttar Pradesh. He'd rob the trucks passing through the area that carried LPG cylinders. He would then kill the drivers and dump their bodies in the crocodile-infested waters of the Hazara Canal. He and his gang would then sell the LPG cylinders for a profit and sell the vehicles as well. Around the same time, Devendra started an illegal kidney transplant syndicate that involved other doctors and middlemen. With their help, he allegedly arranged 125 transplants. He sold each kidney for anywhere from $7,000 to $9,000. But this wasn't all he did. Devendra also targeted local taxi drivers. He'd hail the cabs and then have the driver take him out to an isolated area where he'd proceed to strangle his victims. He'd then take their bodies out to the same watery, crocodile-infested grave where he took the truck drivers. He and his gang then sold the taxis whole or stripped them for parts. They made $300 per murder. Devendra was finally caught in the act of killing a cab driver in 2004, and he was sentenced to life in prison for murdering many others. Although he didn't think the remains of his victims would be found, the police did find items that belonged to 2 of his victims, which kicked off the initial investigation. The victims were brothers who met their cruel fate after picking up Devendra and his crew. But after the bodies were dumped in the canal, they floated down a river where they were discovered and identified. After serving a decade behind bars, Devendra was granted 20 days of parole, and he decided he was going to try and escape. 6 months later, the police received a tip that he was now living with the woman he married in Baprola. When he was caught, Devendra admitted that he had no intention of going back to prison after the 20-day parole. He also had no intention of changing his ways. He literally started up a scam right after he moved to Baprola, where he attempted to sell property that wasn't his. Devendra was brought back to prison, where he confessed to the murders but said he couldn't recall exactly how many people he had killed over the years. He told the officers, and I quote, "I lost count after 50. The police suspect that his body count could be as high as 200. Devendra showed no remorse and was suspected to have enjoyed killing his victims. Let's talk about Jolly Joseph, who killed 6 of her family members between 2002 and 2014 just to seize the family's assets and marry the man she loved. In 1997, Jolly Amma, or Jolly for short, married Roy Thomas. She moved into the family's 3-story pastel pink house in Koodathayi, a small town in Kerala. She seemed to be an upstanding citizen. She had a job at the prestigious National Institute of Technology, Calicut. She'd go to church and help her neighbors when they were sick. For years, Jolly talked about how her house was cursed. In 2002, Jolly's mother-in-law, Annama Thomas, died of unexplainable circumstances. Because she had health issues, her death wasn't considered suspicious, so there was no post-mortem. In 2008, Muhammad Baba, the next-door neighbor, heard what sounded like someone violently ill next door. When he called the home, Jolly told him that her father-in-law, Tom Thomas, wasn't well. Baba decided to go check it out for himself, and when he did, he found Tom lying on his back, foaming at the mouth. Baba took him to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Roy and Jolly inherited the property. 3 years later, Jolly called Baba to come over, and this time he found Roy on the bathroom floor, foaming at the mouth. Roy's uncle Matthew insisted that a post-mortem was needed. It was found that Roy had died after consuming cyanide. The police ruled it as a suicide and didn't investigate further. After this incident, Jolly withdrew from the rest of the community. In 2014, Roy's uncle Matthew, who had called for the post-mortem, died in Jolly's presence of a heart attack, according to Jolly. That same year, Roy's 2-year-old niece died, allegedly after choking on food at a christening, and in 2016, her mother Seely died too. In 2017, Jolly got married to Seely's widowed husband, Shaju. By the time she remarried, suspicions began to grow. After Jolly's first husband died in 2011, Baba claimed he saw a new version of Tom's will, which said that the family home should be transferred to Jolly. This was pretty sus, so Roy's brother decided to look into who else had seen this version of the will. Then Roy's brother told Baba that he discovered that Jolly didn't even work at NIT, and by 2017, Baba had his doubts too. Roy's brother requested a copy of Roy's post-mortem and found discrepancies in Jolly's story. Jolly told Baba that she was making Roy an omelet for dinner when he suddenly ran into the bathroom and collapsed. But in the post-mortem, it was reported that Roy had eaten rice and chickpea curry the night he died. They confronted Jolly about these inconsistencies, but she stuck to her guns, which made them more suspicious. Baba and Roy's brother and sister started looking into the details of the cases for themselves, and they found that the common link was Jolly. They brought this up to the police, who decided it was time to investigate. They found 50 discrepancies between her stories and the evidence. They ordered the bodies of the other victims to be exhumed and tested. After 2 months of analysis, the police went public with their findings. Jolly confessed to the murder of all 6 family members and added that she did this in order to gain control of the assets and marry the man she had her eye on. By eliminating all the obstacles, she was able to marry her Prince Charming. Jolly was arrested and charged with murder and destruction of evidence.